Episode 2 The Legacy of Nanny. The sun had barely risen over the Asante village when young Nanny found herself drawn to the training grounds where warriors honed their skills. It was a place reserved for the most elite fighters, and while Nanny was smaller and younger than most, she had already developed a fierce determination to prove herself. Her father, Prince Nakwan, had taught her that strength was not just in the body, but also in the mind. The sharpest weapon, he would say, is the mind that wields it. But today, the stakes were higher. The village had received word that neighboring tribes were preparing for a great challenge, a competition of strength, agility, and wit to determine which tribe had the strongest fighters. Nanny's heart pounded with excitement and fear. She knew she was young, but she felt something inside her, a calling that she couldn't ignore. Despite her father's protective hesitation, Nanny insisted on entering the competition. Her father's eyes softened as he looked down at her, filled with both pride and concern. "You are brave, Nanny, but this test is not for the faint of heart," he said, resting a hand on her shoulder. "These warriors train for years. They are skilled, experienced, and strong." "But I am strong too, father," she replied, standing taller. "I may be small, but I know how to fight, and I have something they don't, a sharp mind and the teachings of our ancestors." Prince Nakwan hesitated, but he knew his daughter's spirit could not be dimmed. With a nod, he agreed to let her participate, but only if she could face the first challenge on her own terms. Nanny's face lit up, determination gleaming in her eyes as she prepared herself for what lay ahead. The next morning, a crowd gathered in the village square to watch the warriors compete. Nanny was among the youngest and smallest, but her presence was unmistakable. The other fighters looked at her with curiosity, and some even laughed, but she remained steady, her focus unwavering. The first challenge was one of pure strength, carrying heavy stones across a long stretch of ground. The stones were almost as large as Nanny herself, but she didn't flinch. She had watched the others carefully, noting how they used brute force to lift the stones. But Nanny approached with a different strategy. Instead of lifting the stone from above, she bent down and leveraged her body, using the strength of her legs and arms in a coordinated effort to lift and carry it. Slowly, step by step, she moved across the field. The crowd watched in astonishment as she passed by older, larger warriors who had underestimated her. Her father watched with pride, his heart swelling as he saw his daughter using both her strength and her mind to succeed. Next was a test of agility, a race through the dense forest where speed and awareness were critical. Nanny was quick on her feet, weaving through the trees with ease. She had spent years exploring these forests, and she knew every root, every branch, every hidden path. The other warriors, larger and more muscular, struggled to keep up. But Nanny moved like a shadow, light and swift, reaching the finish line well ahead of the others. By now, the laughter and doubt from the other warriors had disappeared. They looked at her with newfound respect, realizing that strength was not just in size, but in skill and willpower. The final challenge, however, would test her mind and spirit, a puzzle designed to test one's knowledge of the ancestors and the natural world. At the center of the village, elders gathered and presented Nanny and the other finalists with a series of symbols, each representing elements from their culture: fire, water, earth, and air. The goal was to arrange them in a way that represented balance and harmony, a task that required not only understanding, but also a deep respect for tradition. Nanny closed her eyes, recalling the lessons her mother had taught her by the firelight, the teachings of the ancestors, and the way each element connected to the others. She moved the symbols carefully, her fingers tracing each one as if feeling their power. After a moment, she stepped back, revealing a pattern that flowed like the natural rhythms of the land. The elders nodded in approval, their eyes reflecting the wisdom of generations. "You have honored your ancestors well, child," one elder said, his voice filled with pride. "It is rare to see someone so young understand the balance of our world." As Nanny stood there, the crowd erupted in cheers, chanting her name. Even the seasoned warriors who had once doubted her joined in, acknowledging her as one of their own. Prince Nakwan, watching from the edge of the gathering, felt his heart swell with pride. That evening, as the fires lit up the village and the sounds of celebration filled the air, Nanny sat quietly by the ancestral shrine, her mother beside her. She felt a deep sense of connection, not only to her family, but to something greater. The strength and wisdom of her people, the legacy of those who came before her. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder and spoke softly. "You have proven yourself today, Nanny. But remember, this is only the beginning. The ancestors have chosen you for a path few can walk." Nanny looked up, her eyes bright with determination. "I am ready, Mother," she replied. And deep within, she knew that whatever lay ahead, she would face it with the strength, intelligence, and spirit of her people.